Hey guys, it's vf.miniatures Warhammer Tactics series, and today we'll take a look at the new points update of the chapter approved 2022 Nephilim. We'll go through all the factions one by one, except the K-Space Marines, because they will receive a new codex very soon, and I don't want to speculate on the units that I don't know anything about yet. However, all the other factions that have received some changes will be covered in this video. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Just to be clear, I'm not going to talk about each and every unit in each and every codex that got changed, because this video will be 2 hours long. In that case, I'll just go through the stuff that I think is valuable and we'll get a general look at what has changed. And we'll start with the big winners of this chapter approved, first of which are Necrons, which was hinted by the cover of the new chapter approved book. Funny enough, the Necron warrior that is depicted there was not changed in price in this chapter approved. The Necron warriors are still 13 points per model. So what do we see here? First of all, we see that almost every unit in the Necrons codex got decreased in price, which is awesome because Necrons struggle so much in 9th edition. I've recently played a game with my Necrons against an Imperial Knights army, and I was tabled on the second turn. It felt like I was playing 1,500 points against a 2,000 point army, and then some. All the named characters got decreased roughly 10 to 15 points, depending on their original price, and all the non-named characters like Lords and Overlords got decreased by 5, and their war gear also decreased by 5 points. All named Cetans went down by 50 points, so the Nightbringer is 320 now, which is great because that model was nowhere near as great as 370 points are. Now it feels roughly in the spot where it should sit. Some units that are rarely used, like Death Marks, Hexmark Destroyer, the Triarch Stalker, they also went down, so maybe they'll see some play now when people start to find extra points in their lists to maybe fill them with these guys. What I'm personally happy about are the Lockhouse Destroyers, especially the heavy Lockhouse Destroyer variant, because I love the models and they are great and they fill the heavy anti-tank role that Necrons, funnily enough, struggle with a bit, but they were too expensive even after the points cuts that they received in previous points updates. Now at 150 per squad of 3, they feel much easier to find a place in the roster for them. Monolith and the Obelisk both went down 30 points. I honestly believe that they still won't be used in competitive play because they are too flimsy, but at least you are not paying as much for that wonderful big piece of plastic. I honestly love the Monolith and I admire the idea of this model and I love using it in my games. However, it's just too bad to be really used somewhere where you are counting on your army to win the game for you. Silent King went down 20 points to 400, which is great because it's one of the best models we have, and with the command point restrictions in the Nephilim now, the command points that the Silent King gives are that much more important because you get them right at the start of the game and you can do with them as you please. I'm also very happy that the Lich Guard got cheaper 3 points and now cost 25 per model because they weren't as survivable as they should be at 25, and now perhaps they are right at the correct spot. Don't get me wrong, the Codex Necrons has a lot of problems still, and those aren't fixed by these points updates. However, I'm glad that most of the Necron players will have around 100 or 150 points extra to play with while building their roster. It's great and it will certainly help us to achieve something with the Necrons, something better with them, maybe even in tournaments. Next big winner are the Death Guard. Almost everything that everyone used in the competitive list got cheaper. Mortarion went down 40 points. Malignant Plaguecaster went down 5. Plague Marines, that's crazy. Plague Marines war gear is completely free now. Everything that they had, plasma guns, melter guns, flail, you name it, everything that was in their datasheet is now free. I think that it's not a typo because in many cases, in case of Imperial Guard, in case of Space Marine Assault Squad and a lot of other infantry units, the war gear was decreased in price or completely annihilated in terms of the cost, so it's now free. And I think it's a great idea because most of the stuff that was in those squads was never taken. All those plasma guns, plasma pistols, no one ever used them because they were taking up the precious points that you needed to actually build your list. And it decreased the amount of flavor that you had in each of your squads. There was nothing special about them, and all those special weapons, they were just left behind on the pages of the codex, which is not great. Hope, however, that it won't break the Plague Marines, because Plague Marines aren't bad by themselves. They were pretty bad before the Armor of Contempt, but now with Armor of Contempt and with this update, when now they have all the melee weapons and shooting weapons that they want right at their hands, I think they are very, very strong. Oxwalkers went down a point each, so a squad of 10 now costs only 50 points instead of 60. Both types of Terminators got cheaper. They cost 40 and 50 respectively, the Blight Lords and the Death Shrouds, which is awesome. It means that any unit that had 10 Blight Lord Terminators, which is like any list of Death Guard that anyone played, is now 20 points cheaper. The Hellbrutes got 10 points cheaper, and I think that it still does not fix them, because you have a lot of units, a lot of great punchy units in Death Guard, and the Hellbrutes, they just have the same rule. I mean, the -1 damage that they get as a Dreadnought, they have the same rule as the Disgusting Resilient does, but they don't get anything extra, like in case of a Hellbrute in the Thousand Suns list. So I think they still won't be used. However, what I'm very happy about are the Filtered Blow drones. They got 15 points cheaper and now cost only 115 points and 120 with Flash More. They are one of the fastest units that the Death Guard have access to, and I think they are very, very important for the army structure. I will talk about that in my How to Play Death Guard video that will be coming out very soon. Mephitic Blight Horrors are now 10 points cheaper. They are awesome. They are a great support shooting platform. They have some melee potential. They are pretty hard to kill. They don't degrade, so awesome models. Plague Burst Crawlers are now 135 or 140 points with the entropy cannons, so a complete steal. They are wonderful models, and any list that starts without 3 of those, I think that you don't understand how this game works. Just kidding, but how this model is wonderful, and you should definitely get some for your army. And as the cherry on this wonderful Nurgly pie, the deadly pathogens all went down 5 points each. So, for example, the Viscous Death is now only 5 points. It's the pathogen that allowed the Foul Blight Spawn to reroll its number of shots on its plague spurt whatever thing. So yeah, Death Guard feel very, very strong after this points update, and I'm very happy about that because I love this army. I think it's great, and it was overshadowed by all the craziness of the Tyranids and the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Tau and Harlequins and all that stuff. They needed this boost, and now I think they have some real potential to compete for the highest tiers of the competitive 40k. Now, my beloved Thousand Suns. I love this army, and I think it's one of the funniest armies to play with in 40k. Magnus the Red is now 30 points cheaper at 420. It still does not solve his biggest problem, namely being shot off the board turn 1, but anyhow, you get more points if you take this model in your force. The Rubric Marines War Gear got a huge discount, and most of it is free now, except the Soul Reaper Cannon and the Warp Flamers, which are now 3 points and 5 points for the Soul Reaper, which is much better than 10 as it previously was. And the greatest thing is that Icon of Flame is now free, so you will get that extra Cabal point for each of your Rubric Marines squads. The only thing I don't like about what happened with Rubric Marines is that now Zangors feel like they just don't belong in this codex, because for 70 points you get a unit of 10 models with toughness 4, 1 wound and 5 up invulnerable save that fail morale like crazy and can't do anything both in combat and in shooting. And just adding 35 points gets you a Psyker unit with 2 wounds each, always dust, 3 up save, 5 up and 1, a lot of shooting, some combat potential, minimal but at least some, and Cabal points that they generate. So taking Zangors now feels like just being crazy, and it does not feel right. They should have some role in the codex, so I hope that it will be fixed in some way, shape or form in the future. Hellbrutes got down 10 points and they now cost 110 with the multi-melter, which is awesome because as I said in my 1000 Suns how to play video, they are the backbone of the army that the 1000 Suns really need. With that -1 damage and 5 up and 1, they are relatively hard to shift. They provide some firepower to help you deal with the heavier targets and free up your smites and your infernal bolter shooting for something else. So it's great to have this model at a cheaper price indeed. And continuing the theme of cheaper upgrades, the Legion Command upgrades are all down 5 points. It's wonderful because previously some of them felt like they were too expensive, and now things like Battle Psyker, which adds 1 to your attacks, weapon skill and ballistic skill, or Protege, which is an additional spell for your Psyker, cost only 5 points each, which is much easier to find in your roster. All in all, I feel that 1000 Suns are big winners here. Moreover, I think they are well prepared for the Nephilim and the new situation with command points, even though this army is very command point hungry in general, but if you just change the pattern in which you spend the command points, and don't forget to use the Cabal points to make your spells go off and gain the command points with those Cabal points, you, I think, will be just fine. Adeptus Mechanicus also come out as winners here because most of their infantry was decreased by 2 points each. So for example, the Celestian Sacrosancts are back to 14 points that they were previously, but they were increased in price in the previous update. Now they are back to 14. The Zephyrim and Seraphim are both down by 2 points, so Zephyrim, that is one of the best units in the book in my opinion, is now 15 points, which is much better. Also, the Games Workshop is trying to push the tanks into our hands, and the both Castigator, Exorcist and Immolator are down by 15, 10 and 10. I'm not sure that they will be used even with this price decrease, but it's nice for those players that had them in their rosters. You will have more points on your hands to play with. Simulacrum Imperialis is not a free upgrade now. It costs 5 points, which is understandable considering that the sisters now have much more miracle dice to use during the game, so probably they're trying to balance it all out with the miracle dice mechanic. So overall, the Adeptus Mechanicus feel great after the Nephilim update, and I'll be happy to see how they perform in the future tournaments. Now let's talk about the biggest losers of this update, and as was expected, the Tyranids got a very huge nerf. Both types of Hive Tyrants went up 20 points, the regular one is 180 and the Winged Hive Tyrant is 210 now. The Tyranid Warriors are obviously up by 5 points because they were too efficient for their price, and I'm happy that they now cost 30 points. I'm very happy that the Maleceptor is up 50 points, and it's absolutely justified because this model got so much for the Tyranids, and any list that was run, any competitive list that was run, used the Maleceptor to get that -1 strength buff within 6 inches, which is crazy, and it should cost a lot of points. The Death Leaper and the Raveners both went up. The Raveners went up 5 and the Death Leaper went up 25 because these units, the Death Leaper as a character and the Raveners as a unit, they were too efficient for their price, as was the case with almost everything in the Tyranids book. For 30 points, Raveners did something that a 40 points unit in the other codex could only dream of. All types of Carnifexes, the regular one, the Screamer Kill and Thornbacks, all went up 15 points, which is understandable because they are basically better dreadnoughts. They are faster, they do more in combat, and they have damage for shooting available to them. They're even better than Dreadnoughts because they have base 2-up save, and with Spore Assists they get a 1-up save, which is incredible. The Exocrine went up 30 points, which is again understandable for the quality of the characteristics that it has. The Harpy is up 15 points to 175, and the heavy venom cannons are up 10 each, so 15 points for each heavy venom cannon, and it's absolutely justified because it was too good to be true. This shooting platform was extremely mobile, very, very efficient, with damage 4 AP3 shots, which are great against monsters, vehicles, Terminators with -1 damage, anything, you name it. The best part is that this shooting platform can literally go across the board and reach out and touch anything, even behind the line of sight blocking terrain, which is something that should not happen for that price. So all in all, the Tyranids Codex still has some problems, like for example the overrun stratagem for 1 command point. It's just crazy stupid and it should not be in the game, as I've discussed in my previous video about the Nephilim Grand Tournament mission pack. But yeah, these points should help deal with some problems that the Tyranids have in their army building composition. It will be much easier to deal with them because they will have like 150 or 200 points less on the board. Next big loser, and it's something that I was not really expecting. I was expecting some nerfs, but I was not expecting that much, are the Tau Empire. Almost everything that we use in the Tau list went up. So the named characters went up probably because the ethereal is now much more important for any list, because it generates the command points without you actually spending them prior to the game. So you don't need a trait, you don't need a relic to get those command points. Of course you need the relic to roll a 2+ on the invocation, but you can do that without a relic, and it's very, very reliable getting the command point on a roll of 2+. But that's not the biggest issue. Biggest issue is everything else, because all the commanders went up 10 points. The plasma rifle is up 5 points if you use it on the commander, is up 5 points when you have 3 of them. So the third one is 5 points more expensive. All the crisis battlesuits are up 10 points to 40 points each, which is a lot, because a lot of armies used the crisis battlesuits in numbers, like 10 of them in a given list, and now paying 100 points more for that is a very, very big blow. Airburst and fragmentation projectors are up 5 points for the first 2 picks, so they are much more expensive. The Iridium battlesuit is now 10 points instead of 5, as it was previously. All the plasmas on the battlesuits went up 5 points, so 10, 15 and 20 now respectively. It was one of the main weapons that everyone used on the crisis battlesuit, so it's now seems very unlikely that anyone will use 10 of these suits anywhere in the games. Crisis bodyguards also went up 5 points to 40, and all the war gear changes are the same as with the crisis battlesuits. The broadsides went up 10 points to 85 base. The Storm Surge is up 70 points, which is incredible. I haven't seen such a big increase in price for a long time. So it was 330, now it's 400 points. It's bollocks. To be honest, I don't understand where did they get all the hate against this Storm Surge, because yeah, it's not a bad unit. It's much better than some other things at 300 points. I am looking at you, Repulsor Executioner. But it was not breaking the game, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've played a couple of games in tournaments against Storm Surges, and I felt that they are great, but I did not feel that they should be that nerfed. Maybe 20 points more, but not 70. And all the shield drones also went up 3 points to 15, and all the gun drones went up 2 points to 10 each. So Tau were hit extremely hard, and I hope that Tau players will find the inner strength and will keep on fighting for the greater good, because it will be much more difficult now. Riptide now feels like a very needed addition to the army, as well as more hammerheads, because those weren't touched in this update, and I feel like they are much more useful now. Next big loser are the Craftworlds. Again, something I was not really expecting, because I did not see so many Craftworld players in tournaments. I saw some, but I did not feel like they are the army that is a big problem for everyone else. So let's look at what happened with them. The huge crowd of Craftworlds character got increased in price, almost everyone. So the Phoenix Lords all went up 10 points, the Kandras, Moganra, Janezar, and etc. The main characters, the Autarchs and the Farseers, went up 5 points each, both for the biker version and the infantry version. The Rangers war gear got more expensive and went up to 10 points each for the -2 to charge and dance cover if being shot from more than 18 inches. All aspect warriors went up 1 point, and those that are very mobile like the swooping hawks and warp spiders went up 2. It's probably a way for the Games Workshop to balance the units that are used primarily and almost exclusively to score the secondaries and primaries for the Craftworlds players. Falcon is up 5 points, and all the vectored engines on all the vehicles went up 10 points to 20 points for the upgrade. For some reason, Games Workshop think that battle focus once per game for the vehicles is very powerful. I'm not an expert on Craftworlds, maybe I don't understand something. If you know why that was so important to make them more expensive, tell me in the comments, please. And all the other platforms like the Fire Prism, Wave Serpent, Crimson Hunter and Hemlock Wraithfighter, so most of the vehicles that you use in the Craftworlds army went up 5 points. The OPSEC Exarch power for the Dire Avengers and the 6-inch extra consolidation for the Banshees went up 5 points each to 15 and 20 respectively. Quite honestly, I don't get why the Craftworlds were hit so hard. I don't feel like they needed that level of nerf, like for example the Tyranids. They honestly did need the nerf that they got. In terms of Craftworlds, I don't get it, because they weren't the biggest elf threat on the tables. The biggest elf threat were Harlequins, and funnily enough, they weren't hit almost in any way, shape or form. Literally only Death Jester got more expensive, only 15 points more expensive, and that's it. No troops getting more expensive, no Star Weavers getting more expensive, no bikes getting more expensive, nothing like that. I would be very interested in your opinion. If you understand why that happened to Craftworlds, please let me know. Next are Drukhari, witches went down by 1 point. That's it, next slide. Next are Space Marines. Their changes can be roughly explained as please buy our tanks that we know you don't want. Because apart from Outriders, which deserved their decrease by 5 points, as I've said multiple times, they should cost the 45 points that they did cost when they came out. And the Eliminators, Devastators and Assault Squads, everything else are the decreases to the vehicles. Because Games Workshop are desperately trying to sell those vehicles, even though their datasheets are just not good enough. Very happy that the Assault Squad got all the war gear discounted by 5 points. It's awesome. The Power Sword, for example, is free now. The shield, the combat shield for the Sergeant is free, and the Eviscerator is only 5 points now. Eliminators can now choose freely between the Last Fusel and the Sniper Rifle with no extra charge. The Centurion Devastators got all their war gear discounted again by 5 points. The Lascan, for example, is now 15 points. Still way too expensive, but at least that's some help for the people that really want to run the Devastators. The Fire Strike Turret is also a great winner here, because it went down 10 points, and the Last Cannon loadout is also 10 points, further 10 points cheaper. The Fire Strike Turret, I think, is something that the Space Marine players should discover for themselves, because it's a pretty efficient unit for what it is priced at. Not going to talk about all the other vehicles, because we've already talked about them a lot of times, and yeah, most of them are still too bad to be used. Next slide. The big family of Space Marine supplements. Most of the named characters went down by a lot of points, namely, for example, the Robuta Gilliman is now 300 points, just as Abaddon will be in the new Chaos Space Marine Codex, which is correct, I think. And most other characters went down by some amount. I'm not going to read through all that. It's just great that some of the units got cheaper, much cheaper. I'm very happy in particular for the Dark Angels, because with all the changes to the command points, the fact that you can get the two best characters in the book, the Azrael and Ezekiel, for 10 points cheaper each is wonderful, because you need Azrael for the rerolls and the command points, and you need Ezekiel for the reliable psychic phase. If you want to learn more about playing the Dark Angels, I have a how to play video about them on the channel. Also, the big family of Space Wolves characters all went down 10 points, so now I would highly recommend to look at, in particular, Ajak, Rockfist and the Ragnar Blackmane, because they are very good for their price, and with all the changes, again, to the command points and warlord traits, relics, you need named characters for your lists. Deathwatch got some discounts for the Kill Team Specialisms, all went down by 5. I still don't like this Kill Team Special mechanic, but it's great for the Army of Renown that most of the Deathwatch players use. And the Kill Team Cassius also went down 20 points. I still don't get why it's even in the Codex. It's a very strange, fluffy choice. I don't think that it's very good, but it's cheaper now. The Grey Knights, all their Wisdom of the Prognosticars and Gifts of the President went down by 5, so Gem of an Octo that we all love and use, the extra +1 to cast for your, +2 to cast actually, for your Librarian is now 10 points. Foretelling of Locus is now 25. It's a redeploy upgrade that you can buy before the game and have a redeploy of 3 units. Servant of the Throne is a 1 use 3+ invulnerable for your Grandmaster, which is again great. And the same happened as with the Codex Space Marines. The Land Raiders went down by 20 points, the Storm Raven went down by 30, and Razorback went down by 10, even though the Assault Cannon went up by 10 for some reason that I don't understand. Grey Knights are in a good spot now. I think they have received a lot because of the Armor of Contempt, and I believe that they can be played really well and efficiently in competitive play. Custodes were hit relatively hard. Trajan Valoris now costs just as he should have costed all along, not 160 points as Helbrecht, but 200 points as a freaking Custodes Captain General should. Both Contemptor Achilles and Galatus went up 10 points to 180 and 170 respectively. I'm not sure why they did that. I don't believe that both of these dreadnoughts needed this increase in price, but well, for some reason they think that they were too powerful for the price they had. I'm pretty sure that Custodes are very much playable now, even with these increases in price. It's only fair that someone like Trajan Valoris should cost more, and the Contemptor Galatus and Achilles are very efficient models, much better than something that the, for example, Space Marines have access to, which is correct, because Adeptus Custodes should be better than Space Marines, but they should cost more, much more than Space Marines. Now the Imperial Guard. I'm not going to go through all that, I'm just going to say that a whole bunch of gear went down in price or got absolutely free. For example, the Special Weapons Squad went up to 45 points, but all the war gear is now free for it. The Heavy Weapons Squad war gear is now free. All Lord of War tanks like Baneblade and Banehammer, all the war gear there is free. Only the last cannons cost 30 points, but they are 20 points cheaper now. Will it solve all the problems that the Astra Militarum have? I highly doubt that. However, it will certainly help the fanatic Astra Militarum players to achieve something on the tabletop. And again, I'm very happy that some of the things that are included in the boxes and the units in the datasheets will get more use thanks to the new policy that I see that the Games Workshop are trying to implement, that the war gear should be a part of the squad and should not be exchanged into just more units in the roster. You should fill out the units with some extra special sauce, because otherwise it will feel bland. The Adeptus Mechanicus finally get something cheaper because they were nerfed time after time for what they did to us after their codex came out. So now their Corpus Cari Electro Priests cost 1 point less each, so 14 points. The Fulgurite Electro Priests also cost 1 point less, so again 14 points. Sicari and the Rust Stalkers went down by 1 to 18, and I love those models. They're great to grab objectives, they're great to ambush opponents. I love the Rust Stalkers. The Cerberus Raiders also went down to 2, and it's great because they are the stuff that you actually send to the objectives and control the board with, so you need more of those as much as possible. And I'm happy that the melee components of the army, the Rust Stalkers and the Electro Priests, both types, are cheaper. It's great. I love when you can include those important melee units in your mainly shooting army to protect yourself from the charges or to countercharge your opponent when the time comes. And last but not least are the Orks. They got a lot of price decreases. Why I have not included them in the big winners? Because I believe that they have so many problems now with their army building composition because of what happened to the command points, which they ate like crazy. They took 2 patrols to have access to 2 war bosses. They bought all the relics, all the traits to make those characters more potent, and now it will be much harder for them to get to that level. But anyways, we have a lot of points updates for them, and those are very good. Beast Boss and Squigosaur went down 15 points, so now it costs 160. All the boys, all the main infantry in the codex went down by 1 point, so boys are now 8, Beast Boys are now 10, the Burner Boys are now 10, Commandos are 11, Nobs are 17, so everything that we usually use in the Orks list is now cheaper, the infantry is cheaper. The Kill Rig got a pretty substantial discount of 20 points, so now it costs only 190 instead of 210, which is great. I love the model, I love the idea, but all it needed is that little bit of discount. So all in all, I think the Ork players will have to adapt a lot to the new chapter approved, but I don't feel that they are completely lost and there is no hope for them. With these new points updates and with some creativity, I'm sure that there is a way to make the Orks work in the world of the new Nephilim chapter approved. So that's it, guys. This was a very long video. I hope I have not made too many mistakes. If you spot something, please let me know in the comments below. I hope this video was useful for you. I am in general very happy for a lot of factions, and I feel like most of the stuff that Games Workshop did with the units is absolutely correct. I just don't get a couple of things that I've talked in this video, and I'll be very happy to hear your opinion on the matter. So that's it, and I'll see you next time.